Hello, I'm Rich Lee of the Hall Institute of Public Policy, and welcome back to the Hall Institute Forum. We've been speaking with Jerry Aumente, Professor Emeritus at Rutgers University, journalist and author, and we've been speaking mostly about the history of New Jersey newspapers, but in our final segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe the present and the future. You mentioned your book is almost like, kind of runs across two tracks and talks about what is likely to happen 10 years out, 20 years out. As we speak, you know, the fate of the Star-Ledger is uncertain. There's been cutbacks at other newspapers. The Bergen Record is going to mobile reporters. What's happening in this industry?
Well, it's the analogy really is if the media landscape had newspapers, books, magazines, radio, television, it was a fairly orderly place. They were like chickens on a roof. A new medium came along and the other chickens moved over. Suddenly, in 1995, the internet, the web as we know it, started to appear. It took about 3 or 4 years, but by the year 2000, it was very clear that the internet was not another chicken on the roof. And as a matter of fact, the internet burned down the chicken coop. It really is, it's a massive situation now where newspapers are feeling it more than radio and television, although radio and TV are also in the same boat of needing to transform themselves. People are simply not reading as many newspapers as they used to. And this started before the internet. In the 1960s and 70s and 80s, there was a steady drop to the point where at one point 80% of the country might have been reading a paper every day. Today that number's close to 35 or 36%. And at the same time, young people who are used to iPods and handheld phones and laptops and are used to reading on a screen are moving away from paper, and that's where the title from ink on paper to the internet comes from. So you've got this. On the one hand, you have people who are simply not using the old. Network television is also losing a large part of its news audience. People are moving to the internet not only because they can get 20 or 30 different sources right away, but they can get audio, they can get graphics. And the other thing is they can interact with each other. The power of the internet is not only my reading a story in the New York Times, but then being able to talk to other people about it, and in some cases talk directly to the reporter. Right. And this has changed the whole industry. And what is happening is internet is sort of sucking out the revenues. The classified used to be a third of the newspaper revenue.
I heard like Craigslist is devastating classified revenue.
Yeah, all of the national and also regional kinds of internet sites. Whether you're selling something or meeting somebody or whatever it happens to be, that used to be a paid classified ad. That's disappearing. The other thing is that we've got a terrible economy, a situation of financial meltdown. So that the newspapers are faced with that. That would have been bad ordinarily, but on top of that, now they've got to readjust. Now, this is all doom and gloom. The positive side of it is that newspapers are in a very special position. They're a branded, trusted source. If they can stay in there long enough to reinvent themselves, to become not just a delivery truck with newspapers, but a delivery truck with the internet and other technologies that we don't even think about yet, in the next 5 or 10 or 20 years, there's going to be a change. But my timeline, which was saying, okay, what's going to happen 30 years from now, is now down to what is happening in the next 5 or 10 years. And we see in New Jersey, a canary in the mine in a sense. What happens here is happening all over the country. Newspapers are not going to disappear, but they're going to be radically changed, and a lot of them are going to go down. And again, using that asteroid theory hitting the landscape, the big elephants, the big dinosaurs are probably having a harder time at this point than the smaller, under-the-radar kinds of things. The weekly, highly local weekly and community papers may be able to hang in there a little bit longer. But a paper like the Star-Ledger, which was a source of both state and national and international news, now that national international is taken away, classifieds are taken away, and they've got to find a new economic model.
Is there any organization, news organization, that you've seen, either in New Jersey or actually anywhere in the country, that actually is ahead of the curve, that maybe has done a good job of seeing what's coming down the line and has adjusted more than other places?
Well, I mean, I think the Star-Ledger has done a really good job of being aware of these changes. It just is moving so fast that it can't catch up with it. But I would say that if you look at, say, the model of NBC, MSNBC, CNBC for financial, they've really gotten their arms around the whole issue of delivering information 24 hours a day in various modes, multi-platform, multimedia. Bloomberg News is a good example of this. The New York Times is doing really well. Washington Post. I mean, the New York Times now has 16 to 18 to possibly 20 million people who are using that newspaper online, whereas they sell about 1.8 million a day of the paper product.
Yeah. With young people, as you say, you know, growing up, getting their information differently than you and I would, do you think they're ever going to go back to reading or start reading newspapers?
I think it's getting harder and harder to do it. You've got to give them a reason to. I mean, Jon Stewart was asked, how do you get young people to read newspapers? And he said, reinstitute the draft. Yeah. It sounds a little bit selfish, but the idea is really that what is really of importance to younger people? I mean, it's not all fluff. It's not all Brittany and all the other things. That they're concerned about world issues. They're concerned about the environment. They're concerned about careers, about surviving in a job market that doesn't exist for them. But you've got to speak to that, and you have to speak to them in the channels that can reach them. And here again is where the reporter who used to just write for the newspaper has to be able to write for that internet, you know, the audio, the graphics, the video, all of these things come together. Right,
exactly. Well, Jerry, I've enjoyed having you here. The time's gone by really fast. There's sure a lot more we could talk about at the issue, but I want to thank you for being here. And I wonder if you could just quickly let people know if they wanted to get a copy of the book, who to... Sure.
The best thing would be to contact New Jersey Press Association, and John O'Brien is the executive director, and then through the other source would be New Jersey Heritage Books. Either one of those would be the source for this.
Okay, well, thank you once again. This is Rich Lee for the Hall Institute of Public Policy. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.